Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the GSMC Football Podcast. We are here on day 2 of the NFL Draft. Obviously, we did our live stream yesterday. It was a good time with myself and Jeremy Lapidus from the Down by Contact Sports show right here on the GSMC family of networks. So, it was an exciting first round, a lot of different things that happened. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. We've got a pretty good show here for you today. I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Obviously, of course, we are, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And, excuse me. So, like I said, we have a great show for you today. And what we'll be covering is basically all things NFL Draft. We're going to be reviewing the first round of the NFL Draft that took place last night, as well as giving you my biggest surprises and biggest head scratchers of the first round. And make sure you stick around for later in the show, where we're going to be kind of following the second round of the NFL Draft, or I guess it would be third round at this point, because the second round is getting ready to end here in just a couple picks or so. So before we start all of this, I just want to ask you guys that if you want to like and follow the show, definitely do that. If you've got a question during the show that you want to make known and you want to just contribute to the show in any way, that's always appreciated, of course. And your input, of course, is always a big part of what makes this show so great. So we thrive on your energy and your insights, and whether it's just a quick comment that you want to leave, or just a thoughtful question, or maybe just an opinion that you have and you want to share, don't hesitate to drop that in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there is an easy way to do that. All you got to do is go to the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. And this guarantees that your message gets on the air. And it's also a great way to support the show. And we do rely on that support from you guys to help bring you the sports content that you guys all love. So we appreciate all of the support. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep the show interactive and exciting. And if you prefer, you can also go to the GSMCsports.net website to tip, donate, and leave a question or a comment over there. So we couldn't do what we do without you guys, and we're thankful to have you. And again, that link is GSMCsports.net. All right, so let's just kind of get into this show here. And obviously, the big story of last night was the NFL Draft. And we got a chance to cover that with Jeremy over on the Down by Contact Sports show. If you haven't already, definitely go check out some of his work, because he has good work over there as well. But it was a good time getting set to, cover the whole draft and all of that. It was a long process, about a 4.5-hour show we did. But overall, I really enjoyed the time, and I thought there was a lot of interesting things that happened throughout the course of that first round there. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here today. So just kind of going over just some of the more notable picks here. Of course, the Tennessee Titans go with Cam Ward. Not really a surprise there. Everybody kind of saw that coming. So I won't spend too much time on that. Obviously, it's an improvement in the quarterback room for the Tennessee Titans by getting Cam. Obviously, they have Will Levis right now, and he's, has not worked out to what they want. So Cam Ward steps in and will likely be the day one starter when week 1 rolls around. The biggest news out of the first couple of picks of the draft, how we got started, was the number 2 pick, which was originally for the Cleveland Browns. They actually were involved in a trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars move up from 5 to number 2, and they select Travis Hunter with the second overall pick. And this was quite a surprise as it happened, but I think the Jaguars get a tremendous player, and, that's going to be quite a receiver room when you got when you've got Brian Thomas Jr. there already, and then you add Travis Hunter along with a head coach that is an offensive coordinator, as he was in Tampa Bay. So he's an offensive-minded coach. So it's obviously a step in a positive direction for that Jacksonville offense, and of course that will do nothing but help Trevor Lawrence and his continued development. So I do like the pick overall. I'm going to get into, all the specific trades that happened. There was a few of them last night. So I'll get into my grades and things like that a little bit later in the show. Right now, I'll just kind of mention, what trades, took place as we go down the list here. So, number 3, the Giants ended up taking Abdul Carter from Penn State. That wasn't really too much of a surprise either. A lot of people sort of figured that was going to happen, especially with the things that happened with the Browns and Jags trade and all that. So, Abdul Carter was the best remaining player available, arguably the best player in the entire draft. So the Giants do very well here, at least with this pick, and we'll get into their other pick a little bit later because they did actually have 2 first-round picks in this draft last night just via a trade. So, but yeah, Abdul Carter from Penn State going to the Giants, I think is good to pair on that defensive line along with Dexter Lawrence. That makes a very formidable front 7, especially when you already have Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau there. So that's only going to make that defense that much stronger. So I think that's a good pickup for the Giants there. They definitely improved their defense last night. And number 4, the Patriots went ahead and selected Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU. This one, I was, not 100% surprised because, offensive tackle was a need, but I actually kind of pegged the Patriots to possibly take Ashton Genty or maybe a receiver, at that position. But, earlier in this whole draft process and, with all the mock drafts and everything, the original mock draft I did, I had Ted McMillan going to the Patriots at number 4. But obviously he went a little bit later in the draft. But the Patriots get their offensive lineman, and I do think it is a good pick for the Patriots. They want to protect Drake May as much as possible as they also try and rebuild that entire offense. So I like that pick from the Patriots there. And then the Browns were at number 5, and they went ahead and took Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. That was a very good pick for them as well. The Browns, I like what they did, in this first round of the draft, just in terms of trades and, the players that they were able to pick up. So I did like what the Browns did there. Mason Graham, the best defensive tackle in the defensive class or defensive tackle class. So that is a good pickup there for the Browns to pair him alongside Myles Garrett. That's going to be a formidable front 7 as well. So good job there for the Browns getting that guy. But number 6 was another one that was kind of, sort of a foregone conclusion. A lot of people sort of figured this would happen. But the Raiders go ahead and they take Ashton Genty from Boise State. So that, of course, addresses a major need that they had at the running back position, and now he will be slated in week 1 as the starter, and they look to have him be the franchise running back going forward. So it's definitely a good move for the Raiders. It's a no-brainer move for the Raiders, really. They've needed that franchise running back since losing Josh Jacobs a couple of years ago. So this way they do get it, and they help Geno Smith, their new quarterback. And then you've got a whole new system with Pete Carroll coming in. And the last time Pete Carroll had a really successful team, it was when he had Marshawn Lynch at his disposal. So it's sort of a similar situation here. The next thing they'll need to do is start to rebuild the defense a little bit more. They still have some good players on that defense, of course, with Max Crosby and all that. But, they'll still need some different pieces on defense, which they may address here in the, coming days here with the rest of the draft coming up. But I like the Raiders there going Ashton Genty for sure. Number 7, the Jets went Armand Membu from Missouri. That was a solid pickup to help protect, of course, Justin Fields, the new quarterback. And, who knows if they go ahead and draft another quarterback as well. So, yeah, but I'm not going to go through each and every single pick because, that'll take too long to do that. So I just want to note just a couple of picks here and there that were just kind of, I guess maybe not eye-popping, but a little bit surprising, I guess, but or good picks in general. The Cowboys over at number 12, they went ahead and they took Tyler Booker, the offensive guard from Alabama. That was a surprise. For me, I thought that they would go skill position there, but they decided to try and rebuild the offensive line from having Tyron Smith retire and all that, so they're trying to replace that. So I understand the thought process or, the logic behind taking an offensive lineman, but I feel like they could have gotten a better player at number 12. That was one that was an interesting one to kind of look at. The Colts, I thought, was an interesting one, too, at number 14. I originally had Tyler Warren going to the Jets, but he falls 7 spots after that to the Indianapolis Colts, and that addresses what I believe was their biggest need this offseason, and he is listed by a lot of people as the best tight end in this class. He actually got taken a few spots ahead of him. Colston Loveland went to the Bears, so that was a solid pickup for them too. So that'll be a good tight end tandem in Chicago with Cole Kmet and now Colston Loveland. So Tyler Warren goes to the Colts, and that should hopefully help whoever it is they decide to trot out at quarterback. So moving forward, the Cincinnati Bengals, they at number 17 took Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher from Texas A&M, and I don't hate the pick in terms of the player because he's a good player. I just feel like the Bengals could have went a different way, like possibly their secondary. They could have addressed that, but they decided against that. So that was a little bit surprising that Shamar Stewart goes to the Bengals there at number 17. I also really liked the Denver Broncos taking Jahdae Barron, the corner from Texas, at number 20. He is the best corner in the class if you take away Travis Hunter, because Travis Hunter plays, of course, receiver and corner. But if you're talking about a guy who just plays one position, I think Jahdae Barron. Possibly you could make the argument for Will Johnson, who ended up going in the second round. But Jahdae Barron was the top corner, I think, in this draft class. And the Broncos pair him with a Defensive Player of the Year in Pat Surtain. So that's going to be a very, very good defense. It's going to be very hard for anybody to throw the ball against that defense. So that'll be exciting to watch if you're a Broncos fan. Number 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the pretty much highly talked about team in this whole draft process. A lot of people on the outside kind of thinking that the Steelers might select a guy like Shedeur Sanders or possibly Jackson Dart with number 21, but they actually go defensive tackle here with Derek Harmon from Oregon, and I actually really, really like the pick. I never really believed that the Steelers would take a quarterback at this position. I don't think anybody that was available at that time was a first round worthy pick, whether that be Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, who ended up going later in the first round anyway, and then, of course, Jalen Milroe's been thrown around there, Tyler Shock too. I don't think any of those guys are first-round talents, so I think the Steelers needed to address defensive tackle more so this draft than quarterback, because next year is where you got to get your quarterback, in my opinion. I think you can kind of just ride out this year with the way you have it set up right now. And, of course, add a quarterback, whether it's, Aaron Rodgers or maybe you add another veteran to back up Mason Rudolph. You just ride it out this 1 year with your quarterback situation as is. And, you get Derek Harmon, one of the best defensive tackles in an already very, very good defensive tackle class. And the Steelers with Omar Khan and, of course, Andy Weidel, former assistant GM over in Philadelphia, who helped build what the Eagles have right now. He's trying to kind of replicate that a little bit here by building in the trenches. The last few years, the Steelers have selected offensive linemen with their first overall pick, and then this year they take defensive linemen with their first overall pick. Not to say that they're not going to address the other areas of need that they have, like running back or corner, and of course quarterback as well too. But so Derek Harmon going to the Steelers, I think, is a very, very good pick. And I also should say thoughts and prayers and heartfelt condolences to Derek Harmon and his family, because one of the more heart-wrenching news stories that came out of this first round of the draft is Derek Harmon's mother, who had been battling with brain surgery and, from having a stroke from a couple of years ago. She had been in and out of the hospital, and unfortunately she passed away shortly after Derek Harmon was selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So condolences there for Derek Harmon and all of his family. That's really kind of a horrible situation on what is supposed to be a day that you celebrate. So really, really tough news there for Derek Harmon, and definitely thoughts and prayers for him and his family for sure. But so moving on from that, just a couple of quick picks I wanted to just mention before we move on to our next segment. The New York Giants moved back into the first round and got Jackson Dart. Thought that was a very surprising move considering what they gave up, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail in the later segments here. But Jackson Dart goes to the Giants, so now that quarterback room has Russell Wilson, Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, and of course Tommy DeVito, who seems to be the odd man out amongst that trio of quarterbacks there. So expect him to be released at some point during this off-season training camp, things like that. That's what I would imagine. So, but yeah, so that was just some, pretty notable things that happened throughout the course of the first round there. It was an interesting first round, for sure, and there were some head-scratching decisions made that I'll definitely get into later on in the show. But before we continue, I will just have to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this NFL draft and what I thought some of the biggest surprises were from last night. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Before we get into the next part of our show, just want to give you another quick reminder that if you have anything that you want to add to the show, whether it's a question or a comment or just anything you just want to say and get featured on a show, just hit up the super chat button. Go over to GSMCsports.net. Also, if you want to tip, donate, or leave a question or a comment there. But again, any kind of input or insight that you want to add to the show is always welcome and always greatly appreciated. So once again, GSMCsports.net if you want to tip, donate, or leave a question or a comment over there. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of the show here. Next segment here, I just want to talk about some of the biggest surprises that happened last night that I just wanted to mention. I think one of the interesting ones that I didn't mention here in the first segment was Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan, falling completely out of the first round. Now, he did eventually get drafted in the second round, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about the second round stuff in the final segment. But Will Johnson falling completely out of the first round I thought was very interesting. Now, it's possible that a lot of teams were kind of iffy on him because of his injury issues, but I still thought it was kind of interesting that he fell all that way, because I thought there was a number of teams that could have used his talents that ended up passing on him. I originally had the Buffalo Bills selecting him at the 30th pick, but obviously that didn't happen. So the Bills ended up taking another corner, Maxwell Hairston, the Kentucky speedster, who was the fastest player in the NFL Combine this past spring or this past year. So yeah, so that was kind of interesting that he fell completely out of the first round. Another surprise was the Jags moving up to get Travis Hunter, and that was really the biggest story of the early part of the first round for sure. The Jags were originally at number 5, move up 3 spots to get to Travis Hunter at that number 2 spot. So they get a really, really good player, of course. A Heisman Trophy winner in Travis Hunter can play multiple positions, whether it's wide receiver or corner. It'll be interesting to see how they utilize him. I do believe he's going to be more receiver than corner, not to say that he's not going to play corner at all, but I think that he is going to be primarily used as a wide receiver, at least starting out in his NFL career, especially with Liam Cohen, an offensive-minded guy. I'm sure he's going to want to have him on the field more often than not when his offense is on the field. So, yeah, I like the pick from the Jags to get Travis Hunter. I was just a little surprised by how much they gave up to move up 3 spots, but they really wanted Travis Hunter, so I guess I understand it in a sense, but they did have to give up essentially an extra, first-round pick in order to do it. So if he works out and he ends up being as good as he can potentially be, then, it's a great pick and it's a great decision. I don't disagree with them taking Travis Hunter. I just thought it was a little strange that they gave up what they did to move up just 3 spots. But I guess that's what, that was worth at that point. That's what the Browns, I guess, were asking for. So either way, the Jags get a really, really good player in Travis Hunter as their new GM tries to, and their new head coach, they try to kind of right the ship with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and hopefully they're able to kind of actually have some positivity in the next coming years. This will be a going a long way in order to do that, though, getting Travis Hunter. So good move there from the Jags to get him. Just a little surprising that it happened the way it did. Another move that I thought was a little surprising, too, was Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver of Ohio State, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 19. And now, it's not to say that Egbuka is not a first-round talent, because I do believe that he absolutely is. It's just I was a little surprised that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were the ones to get him there in the first round, because they just re-signed Chris Godwin and, of course, Mike Evans as well. They already have a pretty stacked receiver room, so to go and get a guy in the first round to essentially, I'm assuming is going to be their number 3 receiver, it's pretty interesting that you would have a first round pick on a guy when you already have a pretty loaded wide receiver room, but that is just going to make that offense that much better. So it is kind of it's a positive in a way, but it is a little questionable just because, they have a pretty solid receiver group, and they probably could have waited and gotten somebody else in maybe the second or third round, like Higgins from Arizona State. And it was Iowa State. I apologize. They could have gotten him because he, of course, fell to the second round, but they go with Egbuka, who is a really good receiver. So they're going to get good production out of him. That's not the question there. It's just, with their receiver room the way it is, it was just kind of surprising that they took another receiver in the first round. So a couple of other ones here. Denver taking Jahdae Barron from Texas, I thought was surprising, but a very good move at the same time, because that defense was already very, very good. And you add him to that secondary that has Pat Surtain, then I think that's a really, really solid move for Denver, going ahead and getting Jahdae Barron there. I just thought it was kind of surprising, because I thought that they were going to go running back. So Marion Hampton was still on the board at that point. And, of course, then he ultimately goes to the Chargers a few picks later. But, I thought they were going to go running back there, and they didn't end up doing that. And it was Jahdae Barron who just makes that defense that much better. So a good move for Denver by going ahead and selecting him. I just thought it was kind of surprising that it actually happened. So, so Denver taking Jahdae Barron, definitely a surprise. But another one, the Bengals taking an edge rusher over a corner or a safety, I thought was kind of surprising, because I thought with the way their secondary played last year and how just porous they were for a good chunk of the year, I thought that maybe they were going to address the secondary in the first round here. And it's not to say that the guy that they got is a bad player. Of course, he could end up being really good. And it's also kind of interesting. It kind of makes you wonder about what's going on with the Trey Hendrickson contract, as far as why they would get an edge rusher in the first round. And you could argue that they went ahead and got him because Sam Hubbard retired this offseason, so that would make sense as well, their other pass rusher. But the Trey Hendrickson thing is still a thing that's going on. No deal has been made yet. So the fact that they take an edge rusher in the first round, over a secondary player, I think is kind of interesting. But maybe there's nothing to that. Maybe I'm looking too much into it. But I thought that it was going to be a corner or a safety. I actually had them taking Malachi Starks, but of course they didn't end up doing that, and then the Ravens got him. But there were still plenty of good corners that were out there too that they could have gotten, because Cam Taylor-Britt is their number one guy right now, and I don't think anyone would confuse him for a Darrelle Revis or anything like that. So, yeah, it was just kind of surprising that they would take an edge rusher over a corner in my mind. But another one that was pretty surprising too, just in the sense that they haven't done this in over 20 years, and that is the Green Bay Packers finally taking an offensive weapon in the first round. They went ahead and they take Matthew Golden from Texas, and this wasn't really a surprise in that sense, in the sense of just getting the guy, because they did need a wide receiver because they had injury issues with Christian Watson, not to mention most of the other guys on that roster are what you would probably call, wide receiver twos for the most part, and there wasn't really a clear-cut WR1 on that roster. So now with getting Matthew Golden, they have a potential to have a guy that is like that. But they have a good collection of solid receivers, though. With Christian Watson when he's healthy, of course, Romeo Doubs can make plays from time to time as well. So adding another receiver to that room is going to help for sure. And then, of course, Matthew Golden, I think, instantly becomes the best receiver in that wide receiver room. At least this coming season anyway, with the injury to Christian Watson. I just think Matthew Golden will eventually be that wide receiver one. Even if it's not this year, he'll eventually get to that point for sure. But I like what the Packers did there. I actually kind of thought that they were going to go edge rusher because that is a need as well, but they decided to go ahead and take a wide receiver. So good move there either way. So I liked it overall. But again, there were a lot of pretty decent surprises in this entire draft. I thought there were some that were kind of head scratching too, and we're going to get to that in the next segment here, as far as biggest head scratching decisions in this draft, and there were a few of them for sure. But yeah, so those were my biggest surprises. Before we get into the next part of the show, I will have to have us take another quick break. But when we come back, we're going to get into some of the more head-scratching decisions that took place last night in the NFL draft. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show, and we're going to get right into this next segment here. We're going to talk about some of the biggest head-scratching decisions that were made last night, and there were a few of them, as there typically always are in these NFL drafts. Some teams make some moves that some people don't necessarily think are the moves that they were going to make, or at least, unexpected types of moves, or, why would this person fit in this situation, or why would you draft a guy in this scenario? So things like that is what we're going to talk about. I have a few of them here listed. First one being the biggest head scratcher, one of the biggest head scratchers of the night was the Dallas Cowboys taking Tyler Booker, the guard from Alabama. Again, we kind of, touched on this a little bit in the earlier segments, but I just didn't necessarily understand it. I understand it from the sense that you want to replace a guy like Tyron Smith who retired. I get that. But it just seems like every time they need a skill position player, it seems like in the last couple of years or so, primarily running back, they don't really go after anything when they have available guys that they can get. Like last night, for example, they had Amarian Hampton on the board there, and they decided not to take him. They could have gotten a couple of receivers that were available. Matthew Golden was available, the Texas guy, but they decided not to do that, and they go offensive lineman. And from what I've kind of seen online, it seems like a lot of Cowboys fans are not necessarily happy about it. And I kind of agree with them. This is just an opportunity that they could have gotten a better player. If you want to go offensive lineman, fine, but I think that there were other prospects out there that were better than Booker. So I just kind of think it's a little bit of a head-scratching decision overall, them going ahead and doing that. He may end up being a very, very good player. This is no disrespect towards him as a player, because he could end up being very good. It's just, I think the Cowboys could have went in a number of different directions instead of this. So I don't think this really moves the needle either way as far as what their season is going to be this coming season. So yeah, it was just kind of head scratching. Another one that's probably one of the more head scratching ones of the entire NFL draft, and that was the Giants trading back into the first round to get Jackson Dart. And they, of course, had just signed Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston in the offseason to be their quarterbacks. And then they take a very good player with the third overall pick, getting Abdul Carter. I thought that was a very good move there, and not really surprising. Everybody kind of thought that they would go that way. But then giving up what they did end up giving up in order to trade back up into the first round to get Jackson Dart, who I don't believe is a first-round talent. I just thought that was a little bit strange that they made that move. I know if you watched the show last night, my co-host Jeremy Lapidus is a Giants fan, and he expressed a little bit of his displeasure at the time of that pick. So I wonder if there are many Giants fans that are kind of feeling the same way in regards to that. I thought it was a little bit head scratching that they made that move, but it is what it is at this point. Possibly Jackson Dart can at least, get a chance to learn behind Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, and, maybe that can help him develop this year. He sits behind those guys, because I don't know if he gets any playing time, barring, of course, injury. Of course, if there's injuries to Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston or both, then obviously there could be conversations about Jackson Dart getting some starting time. But assuming everybody stays healthy, I can't imagine he gets any playing time. So we'll see how he develops there in New York. It's just an interesting pick. I was not expecting the Giants to go ahead and do that. I thought when they were trading back into the first round, I actually thought that they were going to take Shedeur Sanders, but they ended up taking Jackson Dart instead. A team that I thought was going to for sure take Shedeur Sanders was the New Orleans Saints, and they didn't end up doing that. They ended up taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle. So that was another one that I thought was kind of a head scratcher, because they had other possibilities that they could, address, other needs that they could have addressed. Like the quarterback situation is still so up in the air with the whole Derek Carr situation going on. So it kind of made sense for them to take Shedeur Sanders there, but then they, of course, did not. And then they end up taking Tyler Shuck in the second round instead of Shedeur Sanders. So as it stands right now, as I'm talking, Shedeur Sanders is still out there. He still, has not been drafted at this point. And we are now officially into the third round of the NFL draft as we come at you live here. So he still hasn't been taken. So that's kind of interesting. It's in itself. But the Saints not taking him, it doesn't mean that they may end up still taking him. Or no, I guess, I'm sorry, they wouldn't, because they, like I just said, Tyler Shuck just got drafted by them. But I actually also thought the Browns were going to take Shedeur Sanders as well, but they didn't with either of their early second round picks that they had. And of course, they didn't take him in the first round with their fifth pick either, taking Mason Graham instead, which of course is a better decision in my opinion. But yeah, so it was kind of interesting that he just continues to fall, and he's just one moment you'd think, like in this early process, there were times where some people thought that he could go second overall behind Cam Ward, and now he still hasn't been taken yet, and we're in the third round. And as it stands right now, the 49ers are just throwing in their selection in the third round. It's the 75th overall pick. It is in at this point. Since it's, live, I just want to go ahead and just mention it since we're right here, but they haven't announced it yet, but the pick is in, so that's where we stand there. And it looks like it's linebacker Nick Martin from Oklahoma State for the 49ers. So they went ahead, and that's the move that they made right here live here as we were just talking. So just wanted to mention that. But getting back to some of the biggest head scratchers, one of the bigger head scratcher, well, I guess not really a big head scratcher, but just kind of peculiar, I guess, is the Eagles and Chiefs swapping picks. And I didn't think that it was necessary, really. And the Eagles ended up giving up additional picks to the Chiefs in order to move up one spot. And they took a guy that the Chiefs, I don't think, had any real desire of taking. I don't think there was any chance that they take Jihad Campbell, which is who the Eagles ultimately selected in the 31st pick. I don't think they needed to trade up and give up additional assets. I mean, yeah, it may not be that much of an asset, but still, you gave up draft capital to move up one spot to get ahead of a team that was not going to draft the same guy you were going to draft anyway. So just in that sense, I didn't quite understand it. I mean, I like the pick, the Jihad Campbell. The pick itself is really good. If we want to just kind of focus on that, I mean, he's a very good player. I think the Eagles are doing a very good job continuing to rebuild that defense after losing some players in the offseason. The defense really just needs to be retooled, not rebuilt, because they lost a couple of players, but they still have very, very good depth over there in Philadelphia. And then, of course, adding another linebacker like Jihad Campbell, he'll fit right into that defense in that Vic Fangio-led scheme. So I like that pick for the Eagles in terms of doing that. I did like the Chiefs and what they did with the 32nd pick, getting Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle, out of Ohio State, because I think a lot of people were kind of scared off with his injury issues, but I think if he can stay healthy, he can potentially end up being the best tackle taken in this entire draft. So I really liked that pick from the Chiefs. He just fell right into their lap, and of course, it just seems to work out for the Chiefs like it always seems to. So yeah, so there were a few big head scratching moves overall. The Falcons were another team that I thought was kind of interesting, and I kind of thought it was a little bit of a head scratching decision to, move back up into the first round again and take another edge rusher after they just took an edge rusher with their first pick when they took Jalen Walker out of Georgia. And I think that was a good pick, that first pick. But then they came right back into the first round again and took another edge rusher. So I just didn't really understand why they did that. But, it is what it is. They add some extra beef to that defensive line. So obviously Grady Jarrett gone now through this offseason. So they needed some help along the defensive line, not defensive tackle with these picks, of course, but edge rusher still definitely helps for sure. So it's just a little strange that they took two edge rushers back to back in the first round. I just thought it was a little strange overall. But those are my biggest head scratchers from the first round of the draft. I'm sure there'll be some that will continue to kind of confuse some people, as that typically happens with NFL drafts. But yeah, so those were my biggest head scratchers. So let me know if you guys agree, disagree, or whatever the case with these. So in the comments. But before we get going on to with the next part of our show here, I'm going to just take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the trades that happened in the NFL draft last night, and I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts and possible grades on each one of those trades that we witnessed. So stick with us, and we'll be right back right after this break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. To access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show here. We're going to dive right on into our fourth segment of the show. We're going to do some trade grades. There were a few trades that happened last night in the first round of the NFL draft. We started the draft with a trade right after Cam Ward was selected by the Titans, of course. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they select Travis Hunter via a trade with the Cleveland Browns. Now, in the trade itself, the Jaguars received, of course, the number 2 pick from Cleveland, the number 104 pick, which is a 4th rounder, and a 6th rounder at number 200. In exchange, the Browns received number 5 pick, where they used to pick Mason Graham, number 36 pick, which was a 2nd rounder, which they, of course, used on Quinshon Judkins, the running back from Ohio State, and number 126, which is a 4th rounder. And they also got the Jaguars' 1st round pick next year as well. So my grade on this trade is I think the Browns get an A on this trade here, because they get 2 first round picks essentially, and then they're able to get an additional 2nd round pick on top of that, that next year's 1st rounder. And then of course they get another 4th rounder as well. So, to replace their 4th rounder that they lost, of course, by trading with the Jaguars. But I think the Browns win this trade. And, of course, the Jaguars, I'm not really even going to say that they're a loser in this trade, because Travis Hunter is a very good player. But I feel like they gave up 2 first-round picks, essentially, to get this guy. And, it's just, I feel like they gave up a little bit too much just to move up, essentially, 3 spots. But and I don't honestly think the Browns were going to take Travis Hunter, but I guess the Jaguars were afraid that a team like maybe the Patriots possibly would have taken Travis Hunter, or maybe the Giants would have taken him as well. So I guess those are possibilities, but I thought this trade overall, the Browns, I think, win it, and they get an A for me, and I'm going to give the Jaguars about probably a B- is what I'll say, because I really like Travis Hunter. But overall, the trade wasn't terrible, really. It was just a little peculiar that they gave up an additional 1st round pick to the Browns in order to move up just 3 spots. So, so there was another trade that went on here, and it was a Texans and Browns. They have a 5-pick trade overall here, and within that trade, the Texans received picks number 166 and a 2027 5th round pick. The Browns receive picks number 179, 216, and 255. That was a 5-pick trade there within everybody there that was involved in that trade. The Browns and Jaguars swap 1st rounders, like I said before, with the with the Travis Hunter and the Mason Graham acquisitions there. So Texans and Giants, they also made a 4-pick trade. Giants taking Jackson Dart, getting back in to the 1st round, taking him at number 25. They traded with the Texans overall for that. So yeah, and the Browns within that trade, they also take a 34 pick, which is a 2nd rounder, the number 99, which is also a 2nd rounder, or excuse me, a 3rd rounder, and then they have another 3rd rounder, a comp pick as well. So they got a lot of draft capital here overall with this entire pick here. And another trade that happened as well as the Falcons and Rams making a trade to take James Pierce Jr. moving back into the 1st round, and they also get a comp 3rd rounder as well. And then the Rams receive a 2nd rounder, pick number 46, and a comp 7th rounder, as well as a 2026 1st round pick from the Falcons as well. So this trade, of course, was one that I thought was a bit of a head scratcher for the Falcons, going ahead and coming back into the 1st round to take yet another edge rusher when they had just taken Jalen Walker earlier in the 1st round, and then they give up a 1st round pick to do that. So I thought that was very strange, and I have to give the Falcons probably a C-, possibly a D on this trade. The Rams, I think they win the trade. There is another similar situation to the Browns and Jags. I think the Rams are a much more clear-cut winner than the Falcons are in this case, rather than the Browns and Jags picks. But the Falcons giving up a 2026 1st round pick, I think was pretty crazy to move back in and get a guy that they probably, the way the draft was going, they probably could have gotten him in the second round possibly. And James Pierce Jr. is, he did turn some heads at the combine, and he does have potential to be a very good player overall. But I just thought it was kind of strange that they picked 2 back-to-back edge rushers and gave up an additional first-round pick to come back into the first round and take another edge rusher. It was strange. This is back-to-back years for the Falcons where they have made some decisions in the NFL draft that have been a little bit, confusing or, just surprising in the one case, because last year, of course, they went out and they signed Kirk Cousins to the massive deal that he signed, and then they went ahead and they draft Michael Penix at number 8 overall in the first round. So that was kind of confusing, and now Michael Penix is the quarterback, and now they're paying $100 or so million to a backup in Kirk Cousins there in Atlanta. So, and they're having a hard time trying to get out of that contract too, because nobody wants to take on that kind of money for an aging quarterback that is coming off of an Achilles injury, and he showed that he was struggling mightily coming off of that Achilles injury last year. So there's questions about his ability, going forward as well. And you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to him to essentially take up a roster spot. So the Falcons, in my opinion, they need as much assets as they can get. And giving up a first round pick next year, I just think it's a mistake overall. So I have to give them a D for their trade, but I have to give the Falcons an A because they got themselves a first-round pick out of this deal. And, of course, they moved back into the second round, so they didn't have a first-round pick at all this year, which is no real strange, circumstance to them. As, in recent years, they've given up a ton of draft capital in order to build that team that they built that won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. But now the team that they built with that draft capital is kind of dissipated a little bit, but they have continued to, build the team, and they still have stayed competitive despite that. So them getting an additional first round pick on top of, the second rounder, I think is a very solid move for the Rams. And, we'll see what they decide to do with the rest of their draft capital that they have here. So another pick that happened, the last trade, of the first round was the Eagles and Chiefs. They made a 3-pick trade, and the Eagles move up one spot to select Jahad Campbell at number 31, and then the Chiefs move back to number 32, and they also get a 5th rounder at number 164. So the Eagles give away they swap picks, of course, and then they give away an additional 5th rounder in order to move up one spot to get a guy that they probably could have gotten if they just stayed at 32. They definitely could have gotten, because the Chiefs, had offensive tackle in mind the whole time, and of course that's where they ended up going with Josh Simmons at number 32. But Jahad Campbell is a very, very good player. This is not really a detriment to any of the players that were selected with these two teams. It's just, I thought it was a little strange that they moved up one spot and gave up draft capital to move up just one spot to get a guy they could have gotten without moving at all and without giving up additional assets. So I'm not really sure why they did that, but it is what it is. I guess that's why I'm not a GM, and that's why those guys get paid the big bucks, because they know a lot more than I do. I just thought it was a little strange, overall. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So that covers it for that portion of the show as far as my trade grades. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening right now. Obviously, last night we did a 4.5-hour live stream show of the NFL draft of the first round. So obviously this is going to be a much, much shorter version of that. But we're going to go over just some of the picks that have already happened, as well as what we're looking at here in the third round, because the second round is officially over at this point. So we're going to talk about what has currently transpiring, as well as what has already happened. So we'll talk about some of the guys that have gone since last night. So stick with us. We're going to be right back right after this last break, and we're going to get into that final segment of the show. So stick with us, and we'll be right back after this. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're here in our final segment of the show for tonight before we send you on the weekend. Hope you guys all have a great weekend coming up here in the next couple of days. But we're going to just end the show here by kind of just keeping an eye on the draft that's going on right now. As we speak, the Tennessee Titans have got their pick in. It has not yet been announced. And currently the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock for their first pick since their first round selection of Derek Harmon. Guys like Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe, possible targets here, Caleb Johnson as well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There hasn't been any notification yet as far as what the Titans are doing. So we'll have to just wait and see what's going to happen with the Steelers when they select. And of course, I'm going to obviously talk about it as soon as it happens. But right now, we'll just kind of look at some picks that have happened since we've been doing this show here tonight. Couple of picks ago, actually, one of the better corners that were out in the NFL draft was Siobhan Revel Jr. He ends up being selected at number 76, the 12th pick of the NFL draft. He's selected by the Dallas Cowboys. And I think this is a good pick for the Cowboys. It shores up their secondary. It's pretty classic Cowboys pick for sure. Revel's likely going to have 40 or 50 picks higher. He probably could have gone had he not gotten hurt last year. But he's a physical corner. He's got good length, and he's got all those traits, everything that you want to see in a corner. And I think it's a solid pick overall for the Dallas Cowboys there. A couple of other picks here just to kind of touch on as we go into round 2. That was just early round 3 there with those picks. But to start the rounds or in the second round, of course, the Browns were the first pick. In the second round, they get linebacker Carson Schlesinger from UCLA. That's a solid pickup from them. They, of course, trying to continue to build that defense and make that defense that much more formidable. Thought they might actually target an offensive player here, but they did end up taking Quinshon Judkins in the end of the in just a few picks after that. And now the Tennessee Titans selection is officially in, and they have not announced it yet still. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Kevin Winston Jr., safety out of Penn State, goes to the Tennessee Titans. So now that puts the Steelers on the clock, and now it's going to be a question of what they are going to do, and it looks like the pick is in at this point. They have not announced it yet, but the pick is in. The Steelers' top needs right now as it stands are, of course, running back, quarterback possibly, and corner as well is one that I have seen that they have not yet addressed that they could use some additional depth in as well. So the pick has not been announced just yet, but they are still, saying the pick is in, so it should be announced here shortly. As of course the Steelers with their number 1 or their first round pick was Derek Harmon, defensive tackle out of Oregon. So that addresses a defensive line need that they have. So that definitely helps them there. So that kind of cuts the needs down a little bit. You still need a running back. Quarterback, of course, is the popular opinion as to what they might do here. I think if I'm just going to guess here myself, Jalen Milroe and Shedeur Sanders are both still available right now. So maybe I'm kind of leaning towards Jalen Milroe, but here is the Pittsburgh Steelers selection. The pick is in as we stand right now. They have yet to announce it, so just bear with me for a second here. But the number 83 pick in this NFL draft, second or third round here, Pittsburgh Steelers still haven't announced it yet. But I'm thinking it might be quarterback here, if I'm being quite honest. I think it could be quarterback, could be running back as well. But here we go. It's running back Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. So that is what they do here with the third round pick, number 83, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And there is still talk that they could potentially move back into the third round to get an additional third round pick, but we'll have to see. But Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, I think this is a great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Running back was definitely a need for them, and this is a great running back to pair on that offense with, of course, Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, along with now Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. So a solid pickup by the Steelers there. I like it. There's still, Shedeur Sanders still out there. It's crazy. He may even fall out of the third round. Does he fall to the fourth round? Do we see a day 3 Shedeur Sanders pick? It's getting pretty interesting for Shedeur Sanders. But just a quick little overview of Caleb Johnson here. Last year, he was second team Associated Press All-American, Big Ten running back of the year. He was first team All Big Ten. Of course, was a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, which is the nation's top running back. And he was ranked 6th in college football with 138 points scored, and tied for 6th as well in touchdowns. So he was very, very good for them. He's got great size. He's athletic. He's got the right frame. He's used to handling a pretty heavy workload as well, which is good because it's a very run-heavy offense that Arthur Smith and the Steelers are building over there in Pittsburgh. But he is built like a bruiser. He does have a little bit more of a finesse style, but he is, for the most part, pretty solid pickup there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I really do like that pick there for the Steelers at Caleb Johnson at number 83. So as they talk about it here on the NFL draft shows, I think it's a good pick for the Steelers. So let's talk about a little bit of what has happened since we've been in here. Quinshon Judkins, one particular player that just went to the Cleveland Browns early in the second round. I think that is a solid pickup from them. Obviously, they are trying to replace Nick Chubb, who they let go in free agency. He is now a free agent for somebody to pick up, and I think somebody will eventually. But nobody has picked him up just yet right now. But if we take a look at some of the draft or some of the players that have been picked here in tonight's NFL draft here in the second and third round. Just bear with me. I'm just trying to bring it up. My computer's being a little bit slow here, so I apologize for that. But so it should be an interesting day 3 as well. I still think there are a lot of very good players out there. Mike Green, I don't believe has been taken yet, the edge rusher out of Marshall. Of course, Will Johnson was another guy that I thought was I was very shocked that he was still on the board for as long as he was. But of course, he ends up getting snatched up in the second round there eventually. But he was a very quality player that I was quite surprised that he ended up going so far down the boards. But Travion Henderson, the Ohio State product, he goes to New England in the second round, the 6th pick of the second round. That's a solid pickup, I think, for the New England Patriots. And I actually think the Patriots are doing a very good job this offseason by just addressing a lot of needs. Mike Vrabel and that staff are really doing a good job trying to rebuild that team. Drake May should be better this year. They went ahead and they got Stephon Diggs as well. They still have Ramondre Stevenson in the backfield, but Travion Henderson can absolutely challenge for some playing time on day 1. He's that talented. I think he's one of the better running backs in this class, and for him to be able to drop all the way down to the second round, I had a first round grade on him myself, but I really like what the Patriots are doing overall, and Travion Henderson should be a good asset for them. Luther Burden goes immediately after him to the Chicago Bears. That was another one that I thought was a pretty solid pick for the Bears as they continue to try and build around Caleb Williams, and of course having Ben Johnson, the former offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, having him being their head coach. You can just imagine the things that he's going to be able to do with the continued weapons that they continue to get in this offseason. Luther Burden is another great asset for the Chicago Bears to have. Tyler Shuck goes immediately after Luther Burden at number 8, and he goes to the New Orleans Saints. And of course, a lot of people thought, myself included, thought that the Saints were going to take Shedeur Sanders, but then that did not happen. And now Tyler Shuck gets taken ahead of Shedeur Sanders. So Shedeur Sanders continues to fall, and we still don't have an answer as to where he's going to go. So kind of interesting that he's still out there. One move, I know I've kind of talked a little bit negatively about the Cowboys, but one move that I actually did really like that they made was going and getting Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College, the edge rusher, pair him alongside Micah Parsons. That's going to be a very good pass rush if they can, avoid injuries and things of that nature. I think the defense can be much improved than what it has been since they lost Dan Quinn a couple of years ago. But at the number 12 spot in the second round, I think is a solid pickup for the Dallas Cowboys there. Will Johnson, like I mentioned before, he finally gets selected at the number 15 spot in the second round, goes to the Arizona Cardinals, and that helps shore up their secondary a little bit as well. Will Johnson is one of the better corners that was available in this draft. He has some health concerns with his injury issues, and he did not run a 40-yard dash time, so that kind of knocked his stock down a little bit. I thought he was going to be a top 20 pick easily, this year, and then it just didn't end up happening. But, he's an instinctive defensive back. That 2023 tape that he has, not last year, but the 2023 tape shows the kind of bargain that the Cardinals will be getting by getting a guy of this caliber this late on. So I think it's a very, very good pickup for them, for sure. And the Seahawks, I thought, was an interesting one that they did to Elijah Arroyo, tight end out of Miami. I think is a solid pickup for them as well. Overall, the Seahawks need to rebuild or build that offense as much as possible with Sam Darnold there. And, of course, they lost Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So, of course, they have a need there. So I definitely can appreciate them going and selecting a guy like Elijah Arroyo because he is a solid tight end. But yeah, so those are just some of the things that have happened. I'm sure we'll have tons more to talk about. And of course, just wanted to mention the guy that me and Jeremy were talking about all night last night. Mike Green finally goes to the Baltimore Ravens in the second round at number 27. So finally he gets on the board, and he is a Raven. And what a match made in heaven there. That defense is going to be very, very good. With Malachi Starks being added in the first round, and then Mike Green here, that's a scary thought for the Ravens. So great pickup there, and the fact that he was able to fall to him, I mean, that's an A-grade draft right there, in my opinion. But yeah, so those are some of the more notable things that happened throughout the course of the draft, both last night and tonight. So we're going to dive into all of the stuff that happened throughout the entire course of the whole weekend, the whole draft from rounds 1 to 7. We're going to get in more depth as these next shows come up here in the next week or so. So definitely look out for that. But as for now, this is the end of the show here for our Friday show. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast. We're presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support always means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. Really does make a difference, and we also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. Thank you guys once again, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you right here, same time, same place on Monday night next week. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.